at the very start of it, what exactly, is the wholesale offer price?
Yeah, great question. Great place to start. So the wholesale offer price is the offer price that a wholesaler is going to be making on any given piece of real estate with the intention to sell that contract or sell that opportunity to an end buyer, right? A cash buyer. So they need to factor in the investor's exit strategy and ultimately determine what price is going to be attractive to that cash buyer and subtract their own wholesale fee to determine how much as a wholesaler are you going to be offering on that property.
Right. So is that offer price, so what I'm making, kind of disclosed like right away to them in this case? So when I, kind of run through all of the numbers myself, they're obviously aware that I'm doing it for a fee, right? So I would say it's safe to say then that the wholesale offer price includes my assignment fee that's, disclosed to them like kind of right away, right?
Not necessarily. So when we're talking about the wholesale offer price, this is the price that you're making to the seller. So this is the price that you're going to be buying a piece of real estate. You're going to be putting under a contract with a purchase and sale agreement with a seller. And so that is the wholesale price that you're going to be getting it directly with the seller. And so when you flip that contract to an end buyer, you're going to be adding your wholesale fee on top of that.
Right.
And so that's going to be a new price. That's going to be the cash buyer's entrance price into this investment opportunity. And so depending on how you structure your wholesale deal, you may just give them the price that includes your wholesale fee, or you might give them your original contract price and then let them know that there's an assignment fee involved with that. And so when you're double closing, you'll give them the total amount. And then if you're assigning the contract, you can give them the total amount, or you can say, hey, this is my original contract price, plus there's going to be a 10, 20, 30,000 assignment fee on top of that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So when I kind of, Google this and look this up, there's like a common wholesale real estate formula that people use without using the calculator, obviously, So can you kind of explain like that strategy? That's like the most common way to calculate that?
Yeah, the most basic way to figure out what price do you want to get a property under contract as a wholesaler is first you have to understand as a wholesaler, you're flipping the contract to an end buyer. So whatever that end buyer is looking to pay for the property, you just simply subtract your wholesale fee from that price. And so that is the price that you're going to need to get the property under contract to then be able to charge a fee on top of that contract. So again, simply put, you figure out what is your cash buyer going to pay for the property, and you subtract your wholesale fee, which gets you to your wholesale offer price. So that's the most basic formula. But then the question really is, what is your cash buyer willing to pay for the property?
Right. Yeah. So with that formula, then at a very high level, can you give me like a breakdown of like how that would work, kind of in like an example of that wholesale real estate formula?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just say that that your cash buyer is purchasing properties at a 20% discount to the market value of a given property. So let's just call it $200,000 is what the property is worth. And so you would simply subtract 20% of that value, and that would give you the price that your buyer is willing to pay for that property. So if it's $200,000, 20% of that is going to lead you to a $160,000 value. So that when this investor is buying the property, they now have a baked in 20% equity in the deal. They're getting a discount because that's just what real estate investors do. They buy properties that have a built-in profit. They're able to monetize it somehow. So knowing that this investor would pay $160,000, now you have to figure out how are you going to get paid as a wholesaler. So then you just subtract whatever you're looking to charge on this wholesale deal. So let's just say you wanted to make $20,000.
Yeah.
Then you just subtract $20,000 from 160, and that means that you need to get that property under contract for $140,000.
Got it. So that they make money, the cash buyer, and I make that wholesale fee of $20,000 as well. Yeah.
Right.
Pretty simple, honestly, as the formula goes, right? So when you said 20% discount, which I think the general rule that I found online is called the 70% rule. So I guess that would be like 30% discount. What exactly is that because it's a very common thing that I see all the time. What exactly is that? Why? Where did they get that number? What is it used for? And then why? In the example that you just gave me, why did you go to 20%, not 30? I guess
Yeah, exactly. So to start, the 20%, versus 10% versus 30%, it's all about what is your investor looking to purchase? What's their investment model? What's their investment criteria? And so some investors are looking for a smaller discount than others. And so it comes down to understanding your cash buyer's criteria, which is something that we talk about very heavily in our communities, on our channel, and our content, of really understanding what is your cash buyer's business model and how are they actually making money on these investments. So it will vary. So it just comes down to what is your end goal as a wholesaler? Who are you wholesaling these properties to? And so what is the 70% rule? So the 70% rule simply states, and it can be any percent. It can be 70%, 80%, 60%. But the 70% rule states that you take the after repair value of a property. So what is this property worth after repairs, after it's been improved? You multiply that number by 70%, and then you subtract repairs from that number to ultimately determine what is the maximum allowable offer for that investor. So what that simply says is at that 70% number, as an investor, that's the all-in cost that you're going to want to be on a property that's going to be worth 100% of that value. So you're essentially baking in a 30% gross margin into the deal. So for example, if you knew that your property is going to be worth $100,000 after it's all fixed up, right? Very low price point, but easy example.
Right.
So let's say the ARV, the after repair value, is $100,000. If you're using the 70% rule, you multiply 100,000 by 70%, that gets you to $70,000, and you subtract the repairs from that number. So if it cost $20,000 in repairs, then an investor is going to want to buy it for $50,000.
Got it.
Because $50,000 purchase price plus $20,000 in repairs, once you're all in at $70,000, it should in theory be worth $100,000. So as an investor, you've just made a return on your money because you've effectively paid $70,000 for something that's worth $100,000.
Right.
So that's how you make a return on your money. And as a wholesaler, if you know that your cash buyer is willing to pay $50,000 for this property, then whatever you can negotiate under $50,000 is your fee and your profit as a wholesaler.
Right. Yeah. So the better I am at negotiating that is how much money I technically make at the end. Is there ever a point where you would adjust your wholesale fee lower just to make your cash buyer a little bit more happy and a little bit more accepting of the deal? Does that happen a lot? Because I feel like that would happen to a beginner like me, where it's like, oh, I'm just starting out. I just want to get kind of this deal move forward with to get some deals under my belt, So I guess your students come across this problem? Have you come across this problem before?
Yeah, I think a lot of newer wholesalers will go into these deals and shooting for the moon and trying to rip a $50,000 wholesale fee on their first try.
Which would be great.
Of course, yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to make a home run on every deal?
Yeah.
The problem is it's going to make you offer a lot less competitively, and your offer is going to be very low. So in that example, if you're shooting for $30,000 wholesale fee and you're offering $20,000 for that property, there might be investors offering $40,000 or $50,000 for that property. So you're just not going to be able to get your offer accepted.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for new wholesalers to get wins no matter how big or small. So I always recommend, if you can even make $1,000 on your first wholesale deal, that's called proof of concept, right? You're going from 0 to 1,000. That's a huge win.
Right.
And so now you get a taste of what it feels like to be on the other side of the transaction where you're actually collecting the check. And so that is validation, and it shows you every step of the process, because a lot of wholesalers might not get to that point because they're just giving up too early, or again, they're shooting for the moon and they're missing out on a lot of deals. So I'd rather see someone make something and get the full experience, because now they're excited. Now they're like, wow, I just put some money in my pocket. And so now I can rinse and repeat. And now you're building a relationship with that cash buyer. So they're going to want to buy deals from you over and over and over again.
Right.
So it's important not to be too greedy and try to make that wholesale fee so rich that it sucks all the profit out of the deal. And make sure your buyer's getting a good deal so that they're going to pick up the phone when you call them next time, and they're going to look at your deals whenever you send it to them.
Right.
So
yeah,
that'd be my advice. Totally be flexible with it. And, you can start a little higher, but just have some wiggle room so that you're okay with making a smaller fee just to get momentum, because momentum's everything in this business.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too greedy myself. I kind of just want to get, the deals done first so I can get that experience.
Totally.
I'm really glad you said that. So, a lot hinges though, I guess, on what the cash buyer is willing to pay, right? So, what would you say is the best way to gauge that? Is there a specific number you shoot for, or do you just ask them or something? What's the best way to gauge what they want?
This is really the most important thing when calculating your wholesale offer price, right? That's the $1 million question. What is your cash buyer willing and able to pay, and what are they willing to commit to as soon as you present that contract to them?
Yeah.
So you have to understand, what is your cash buyer doing in real estate? Are they a fix and flipper? Are they buying, rehabbing, and selling the property for a profit? If they are, these investors typically require the biggest discount from market value, from the ARV. And so if you're wholesaling to rental property owners, to landlords who are looking to buy and hold a property and collect rental income, then those are the type of investors that will pay a little bit more for the same property typically, because they're not looking to get in and get out and make a nice chunk of capital. They're looking to buy and hold the property, collect income, over the next several years, and then eventually sell it, which has its own set of returns and timelines. So they're usually willing to pay a little bit more. And then there's also developer buyers too, which they're looking at the land as something that they can purchase, probably scrape the property and maybe build apartments or just do something with it. So my point here is you have to understand what the buyer is really doing in real estate. And the better wholesalers that we train and that we work with, they have a very dialed in knowledge of what their buyers are doing and how to calculate the desirable price that their buyers are looking for.
Right.
So for a fix and flipper, for example, because there's so many of them out there, that's one of the best strategies in real estate to make large chunks of capital, outside of wholesaling itself. So fix and flippers generally look for a 20 to 30% gross margin, and that's why they look for that 70% rule, right? As you've seen online or just floating around the internet and in the industry, a lot of investors will just quickly say, hey, I'm looking for the ARV times 70% minus repairs.
Yeah.
Because that's an amazing deal when you think about it. Yeah, again, you're paying $70,000 for something that's worth $100,000. So you're probably not going to lose on a deal like that. There are some people that say, I want to buy it at 60% of the ARV minus repairs. And I'm just great for you. I would love deals like that, but we're probably not going to be wholesaling any deals to you, because there are tons of investors that we work with that are in the 80s, 80 to 85% of ARV minus repairs, and they're taking those deals all day long. So the better you can understand what your buyers are looking for and what price is going to be attractive to them, the more dialed in your wholesale offer price is going to be, because you just simply back out from that number whatever you want to charge for your wholesale fee.
Right.
So to your question, the best way is to ask your buyers, right? Ask them, what's your criteria? What's your buy box is another way of phrasing it. So what's your acquisition criteria? What types of property are you looking for? You want to start with the location, the types of rehab that they're looking to get into, their intended use of the property. Again, are they flipping? Are they renting the property? Are they looking for something that's a little bit more move-in ready that just needs some cosmetic updates? Or are they willing to rebuild foundations and redo electric and plumbing and get permitting? I know some investors that are building apartments and building units. So that's a completely different analysis. So the more you can think like an investor and think like a cash buyer and really the end buyer for your deal, the better off you're going to be as a wholesaler.
Right.
So really just picking your cash buyers' brains, spending time with them. That's why we always talk about building relationships with buyers and doing whatever you can to think as closely as you can with them, which is why we use our deal calculator when we're calculating our wholesale offer price. You know, we don't advocate for the 70% rule when you're looking at buying a property, right? We like to take a more calculated approach because we like to look at the big picture. You know, not only is it good for wholesalers to get educated on all of the numbers that go into a fix and flip or a buy and hold, but it allows you to make more competitive offers too. And as we'll get into a little bit later in the video, we can make higher offers pretty much every time using our deal calculator compared to a 70% rule investor or a 75% rule investor because of our approach to analyzing deals and submitting wholesale offers.
Yeah, the equations or the wholesale formulas themselves seem a little too simple in you know, and I'm always one to, you know, not create too much work for myself, you know, work smarter, but it seems almost too simple to even make like a really good offer because you have other investors also competing for the same thing. In my mind, it's like the person with the most granular analysis will usually win at the end of the day because they put the work in, right?
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that you brought up the cash buyer relationship thing because I feel like that's been brought up just so much as to how important that relationship actually is, you know, right? So
totally. I mean, just for example, we're working on a deal right now in Colorado where I've got a great relationship with a buyer out there. He's already bought 50 houses this year. And so my acquisitions guy got a property under contract, you know, multiple six figures under the asking price. So great deal. So I talked to the buyer and basically had him walk it yesterday, and he gave me a price that's going to work for him. And from there, it's like we know exactly where we need to be on our contract in order to make, as you know, whatever we can squeeze in under that price. So that's why having a relationship is so key, because sometimes you can just simply ask your cash buyer, what would you pay for this property? Right. And then now you just have to subtract your wholesale fee. So that's why relationships are key. Otherwise, you're kind of guessing. If you don't have their criteria, then you can really dial it in as closely as possible. But if you can hear it from the buyer and they're willing to commit to it, then that's the most confident you can be in your negotiations.
Be on the lookout for the next video in this series. And if you want to build a hyper profitable wholesaling and flipping business, then check out my full in-depth training at realestateskills.com/watch. See you there, and happy wholesaling.